The oral session is risk and protect factors, bullying prevention in preschools. And Muthanna Samara, you are first speaker, and you will talk about examine the psychology well-being of refugee children and the role of friendship and bullying. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for attending at this late time. I'm sure it's not easy, so I will try to be nice and quick and so on. So, examining the psychological well-being of refugee, I would like to acknowledge my colleagues Ayman, Amira, and Sarah, who participated in this research. Maybe most of you knows the ecological model, so I will just quickly go and say that across the presentation, I will try to explain the stages that refugees goes through, and to say that refugees goes through disruption through their lives, and thus into their ecological model. It disrupts their own individual characteristics, it disrupts the family, the closest environment, and then the neighborhood, the country, the politics, and so on. So, the first stage that refugee children goes through is that they become refugees at their own home country. They witness or subjected to a series of traumatic events. They witness or forced to participate in violence and also have some losses amongst their families. They are also deprived from their basic human rights. Thus, all of the ecological model is disrupted. As a result, they also often experience a continued threat to their life, to their psychopathology, emotions, cognitive ability, and even their daily life activities with regards to with family, in the school, academic achievement, and so on. In the first study that we did amongst children in the Gaza Strip, amongst 1,029 children who are from a representative sample in the Gaza Strip in Palestine, they were involved or exposed to war trauma, and most of them were also displaced in different areas with relatives, neighbors, and schools because of the war, because their houses were destroyed. And they were also exposed to different violence at home by siblings and or parents, at school by peers at school, at neighborhood, and also the political violence, which is war trauma. And we investigated the effect of involvement in multiple contexts of violence on their mental health ability. And we found that there is a cumulative effect. The more involvement in multiple contexts in violence, the higher the psychopathology with regards to PTSD, depression, or emotional and behavioral problems. So those who are involved in 3 contexts have higher psychopathology in comparison to those who are involved in 2, and in comparison to those who are involved in 1, and in comparison to those who are involved, 1, 2, 3. And 4 because the 4th is political violence. Of course, in comparison to none. So this is at their home country, they are exposed to this violence. And then some of these children or people flee from their houses. They are forced to leave their houses. There are nearly 50 million children who have been uprooted across the globe, 20 million of them driven from their homes by conflicts not of their making. And actually, children now make up more than half of the world's refugees, despite the fact they account for less than a third of the global population. So these children go through these difficulties to disrupt their own life. In the second stage, the process of migration, they face difficult or dangerous journey, have to cross dangerous terrains or territories, face further conflict, they rely sometimes on smugglers or traffickers, and they have also to cope with lack of resources. This is just an example of refugees on the borders of Greece in 2019. And as the poet says, no one leaves home unless home is the mouth of shark. You only run for the border when you see your whole city running as well. No one puts children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. And in the third stage, the post-displacement adjusting to a new society and culture, which is a cultural bereavement for these children, adjusting to a new place, foreign place, and finding somewhere to live, to study, and adapt to the socio-cultural, political, and legal framework, new language, and new schooling and educational system. Even after resettlement, they feel some sadness, anger, guilt, maybe feeling that they still miss their own country, concentration difficulties and disruption, and lack of educational progress. So, and when we look at the political sphere as well, in the ecological model, we can see that the media and the politicians, they add salt to the injury, while they say our country would be overwhelmed if it opened its doors to every refugee. Some try to break into our country. The flow of people across the Mediterranean towards our country is a swarm. So in our study, we have 120 British-born children from 7 primary schools and 150 refugee children recruited from 2 refugee charities from different countries in the world. And we found that refugee children performed worse compared to British-born children in different aspects, including peer problems, functional impairment, which is part of the PTSD, functional impairment in their daily life activities, and more physical illnesses and more psychosomatic problems. When we adjusted for bullying and friendship quality and number of friends, the differences has disappeared between refugee children and British children. So when we took into account friendship quality, the number of friends, these differences in mental health problems has disappeared, which means that this explains the differences in mental health problems. So if we strengthen friendship quality and prevent bullying to happen between refugee children, this also can improve their mental health. And we found that these negative friendship quality, peer victimization, sibling bullying, and peer bullying predicts these mental health problems amongst refugees, psychosomatic problems, peer problems, physical health, and self-esteem. Thus, as I said, friendship quality can explain these problems. However, it cannot explain physical health problems and psychosomatic, which may indicate that refugee children may indicate to the need and importance of health awareness. They lack the resources maybe or the access. They don't know how to access these resources. In the second study, we looked at adult refugees versus home British adults. 152 came to the UK as refugees before the age of 18, 148 British-born participants. And the same thing, we found that refugees did worse in psychopathology, PTSD, more likely to have PTSD, depression, and less likely to have better psychological well-being and lower life satisfaction in comparison to British adults. Again, we controlled for friendship as well as more years spent in the UK, and these differences has disappeared. So the more time they spend in the UK and the social network support can help them to overcome these mental health problems. The third study, or the fourth study, we did investigate interventions amongst different refugee charities. There is one charity which has sport intervention. Another charity has a creative expression, another one with mentoring scheme, education, social activities. And we compared again between 80 refugees from 7 different countries who came to the UK and 80 controlled British and American children. So when we compared between refugees who participated in these interventions and those who didn't participate, we found out that some specific interventions help in specific mental health problems. So, for example, we can see here that sport intervention improves life satisfaction amongst refugees. So those who participated in sport intervention have improved their life satisfaction in comparison to those refugees who didn't participate in this intervention. Educational intervention as well improved life satisfaction. Mentoring scheme reduced conduct problems. Social activities improved, reduced emotional problems and total difficulties, behavioral problems, and increased self-esteem. So we can see here that different interventions can work with different mental health and behavioral problems. Each intervention should be tailored across accordingly. Thus, exposure to violence in multiple contexts affects psychological well-being and resilience. And we can see that friendship, quality, peer relationships are important factors to reduce these mental health problems. Intervening early, we can intervene by improving the quality of friendship, the peer relationships, the social networks, so that these children won't face these problems when they become adolescents or adults. So we can intervene early to prevent this. And also, we have new direction in research and practice, because this is essential with the lack of mental health services and health practitioners, especially when you can see in COVID, we always dealt with the medical aspect, but we didn't deal with the mental health. And we discovered that our mental health services are so poor, not just in where are there wars or refugees, but also in advanced countries, they discovered that their mental health resources are so behind. So that's why we started to think accordingly, and you can see here, for 100,000 people, there are only 6 psychologists in global, but some countries, they have 0 to 2, while in rich countries, there is around 45 psychologists. So there is a lack of practitioners, and thus we started to think that if we don't have enough practitioners, maybe we should use the technology just in order to reduce the symptoms of these refugees and children in war zones. So we started to work on a virtual reality intervention, which includes 5 sessions. In each session, there are 5 modules, including psychoeducation, breathing and relaxation techniques, adventure, art, and play therapy. I will just show you very, very briefly just part of it, the beginning and the end of it, just to give you a taste of what we have done. And the one who speaks, it's from Amazon Polly, so that the voice will change later. And we have translated that into different languages as well.
Sit comfortably on the beach, relax your body. Now you will learn how to breathe deeply. When we breathe deeply, our shoulders stay still and our stomachs should go out. Okay, you did really well. You should be proud of yourself. You earned a breathing badge.
So this is what the child sees in their virtual reality, and they can control. There are instructions and so on. That just to finish with this story, really, just to tell you that history repeats itself, and we should do more so that history will not repeat itself. I will show you, and we'll end with this, 2 stories. One for Ahmed from Damascus in Syria, who became a refugee, and Harry, 92 years old, from Berlin, Germany, from the World War II. And the stories are so close to each other and very, very similar, as you can see.
It was a happy childhood, but I could feel what was happening around me. One morning I woke up, the shops had been ransacked, all the windows were smashed, and my school had been burned.
الصوت كان كتير عالي، كل البيت كان عم يهز، كان كتير قريب الصوت، الناس كانت عم تصرخ وتركض، فكتير عالم انقتلت وماتت.
My mother said I had to go. I didn't want to leave her. But she said we would meet again soon. She must have known that she would never see me again.
كان قرار إنه موت ولا عيش. أنا وأخوي هربنا لحالنا، نمنا بالشارع، بالبساتين، بالحدائق، وين ما يصح لنا.
They brought us to a refugee camp. We had hardly any food.
الرجال كانوا حاطيننا بقارب صغير، كان لشخصين أو 3، بس نحن كنا 12. بأي لحظة كان ممكن يقلب.
Planes flew over us and gunned our boat. I dived and hid under a raft.
كان كتير عتم، ما قدرت لاقي أخوي. بلش صرخ بشار بشار.
I've never been more scared in my whole life. I thought I was going to die.
قضينا 10 أيام بالمي.
I thought about my family the whole time.
أكتر شي اشتقت له هو أمي.
We were waiting to know our fate. Well, thankfully, they let us in.
كنا كتير مبسوطين لما وصلنا آخر شي.
I am alive.
أنا عايش، أنا
I
واحد
am
من
one of the
المحظوظين.
lucky ones.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The second speaker is going to talk about bullying proofing and learning environment. Please come, Saga Pardede. Pardede. I'm sorry for the wrong pronunciation.
All right, thank you. So my name is Saga Pardede. I'm from the University of Agder, Norway. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about bully-proofing the learning environment. My colleague was supposed to be here actually presenting this, not myself, but she can't make it, so I'm taking over. Just to give a bit of background, the reason why we're doing this is we are 2 PhDs and 1 professor, and part of our kind of work is that for Themis, she has to deliver a course. The course is called Success. I'm not going to explain what that course is about, because she will mention that later on. But my task with Themis is to evaluate the course afterwards using the 7 principles by Checkering Gamson. So I don't know if anyone here knows the 7 principles, but the idea of the 7 principles is to make education practice a lot better, essentially. What are the 7 principles? So here are the 7 principles. It's based on student-faculty contact. It's based on the cooperation among students, active learning, prompt feedback, the emphasis on time and task, communicates high expectations between students and teachers, and also respects of diverse talents and means of learning. And during the time when we evaluate this course using the 7 principles, we kind of realized there was something not right. Despite the 7 principle is something that's really solid, it's been used a lot of times, and for some reason our university have decided to use this as a framework. So we came up with, is this good practice in terms of inclusion? And following that, we came up with, why is it important to have an inclusive learning environment? If you're probably thinking, what's this got to do with bullying so far? It's because studies have indicated that people have a need, psychological need to belong and to be emotionally accepted. The reason why people have this need is because it connects to our sense of worth. And our sense of worth essentially connects to the way we feel included or excluded. And when we feel excluded, this sense of exclusion plays to our self-concept, which basically connects to our identity, so we don't feel like we belong and emotionally accepted. So it kind of goes a full circle, essentially. So the way we saw it is that sense of exclusion equals to bullying. We realized there's no single definition of bullying, but we also realized that social exclusion hurts, and it can leave a permanent scar as much as physical action or bullying. And according to Kamashiro, in 2019, explains that how bullying emerges from cultural norms. We came up with this as an idea. Just take a moment to read. So for us, when we looked at this, this is the way we understood and how we view bullying or exclusion in terms of, for this 7 principle. It connects to the latter, definitely for us. So based on our reflections, we ask ourselves, did we bully our students? We obviously said to ourselves, no. But perhaps we did without realizing it, even though it's not our intention. So then our reflection went back to the success course. Did it actually offer inclusive learning environment? The answer was, for us, was no. My colleague Themis is going to show this.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation from my side too. As Saga mentioned, we assessed one of our courses with the 7 principles and found out that satisfying the 7 principles does not necessarily mean that we have an inclusive course. In the next minutes, I will demonstrate 2 examples from this evaluation. But before we proceed, let me share some background information about the course we evaluated. First, to give you some context, the title of the course is Success Strategies for Goal Achievement. Basically, we teach students strategies that will help them succeed, whatever that means for them. The course is built in the Campus platform and it's completely digital. It is comprised of modules, as you can see here on the screen. And modules contents include videos for theory, testimonial videos, quizzes, discussions, and individual assignments. As you can understand, we have a very colorful course. Indeed, when we assess the course contents with principle 3 of the 7 principles, which is the principle of active learning, we found the course very adequate. Active learning is encouraged by multiple means in the course. First, we have group discussions. In addition, every week we organize webinars, in part to better analyze the theory, and in part to hear questions and recommendations in a Q&A session. Then, students reflect on how they have implemented the different success strategies in their lives with individual assignments, which are reviewed by us and by their peers. With every module, we ask students to practice specific habits, meditations, and affirmations. Finally, in the beginning of the course, students choose a skill they want to develop, such as drawing, knitting, yoga, or other things, and reflect on their progress with discussions. Interesting as the course activities are, we discovered that we have not cared to be open to knowledge. Let me share you a story that will help you understand how we came up with this conclusion. A couple of years ago, I was in a gathering and we had a discussion about how weddings are organized in different countries. A friend mentioned that in Rwanda, the wedding involves the whole neighborhood. Which is to say, if your neighbor is getting married and you are in Rwanda, you should be ready to accommodate wedding guests. And of course, this is reciprocated. The duty for hospitality is so strong that houses must be open for guests at any time all year around, even when there is no weddings. That sounded very unfamiliar to a friend from Denmark, who responded, "Then how do you even make plans?" To which my Rwandan friend said, "Well, we don't." Now you may wonder why I'm telling you this story. Well, it is an excellent example of how planning is not a crucial aspect for some cultures. True as this may be, the core of our success course is the planning element. And then we have the following question. Shouldn't we also promote, at least, that planning might not be needed for success? From our curriculum, our students might infer that if they do not have planning skills, they cannot be consistently successful. It is, as we are dismissing the experience of whole culture. As you can see, this is an example that even though we have implemented the specific principle, we could not ensure that the course was sufficiently open to knowledge and thus inclusive. Another example of how the 7 principles fail to ensure inclusion or inclusive participation is the following. As Saga mentioned in the beginning, the first principle for effective learning is satisfactory contact between students and teachers. In our course, we have designed multiple ways for students to reach us, from live contact through the webinars, to personal communication with emails, and to discussion groups where instructors actively participate. However, upon assessment with the criterion of inclusive participation, we discovered that this is simply not enough. In fact, if we take the example of students with hearing impairment, our course lacks a lot. The webinar does not have subtitles, nor a sign language translator. In other words, how do we expect all students to participate with ease? Now that we have shown how an established framework does not ensure inclusion of participation and openness to knowledge, the question is it even possible? Is it possible to get 100% inclusion? Our answer is no. I can share with you another example from our daily lives. As you may know, people from different countries have diverse ways to communicate to others. For instance, in Greece, we use plural to address people who ought to be respected. In some other countries, like South Korea, this is achieved with the use of honorifics. On the other hand, in Norway, people tend to talk to everybody with the same way, as this is a sign of equality. In our course, we have people from all over the world. In the beginning of the course, we set community guidelines for the discussions to ensure that people react to others in a nice way. But let's assume we direct everyone to talk to each other as equals, because this is the norm in Norwegian culture. That may be considered the polite way in Norway, and in some other countries, it might be considered disrespectful to other students. And it is not possible to satisfy both communication methods at the same time. You have to choose one. Also, it would be very complicated to respond to students differently according to their background. So do we imply that we should not work towards inclusive learning environments? Of course not. We should definitely put our energies to it because that will bring us closer to our goals. It is a better choice than just letting it to the teacher's discretion. Thus, what we suggest is to use the 2 supplementary principles as a method to identify threats of inclusion. Then, instructors should design supplementary features to eliminate these threats. For example, in our case, we can support students with hearing disabilities by changing our webinar software to one that provides automatic subtitles for the webinars. Or we can set learning environment that is more open to knowledge by acknowledging the limitation of our material and by encouraging students to supplement it with their own suggestions.
So our final thought on what we discovered in the case study is that we think it's worthwhile to use these 2 extra principles of inclusion and openness to knowledge towards reaching a more inclusive learning environment, as exemplified in our analysis. And that we are fully aware 100% inclusion is something that's just impossible and it's looking more like a marathon as opposed to a sprint. And it's a long game and not a quick fix. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker for today is Antonella Brighi. And you are going to talk about fostering early socio-emotional skills at preschools for the prevention of bullying.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is a test of your resilience, so it's not a presentation. My name is Antonella Brighi. I come from Italy, and I'm the first one, and the other people are people working with me. Some of them are at the University of Bologna, where I've been for many years before coming to the University of Bolzano, which is a place close to the border between Italy and Austria. However, I'm presenting here as the partial result of a study that we did in the framework of an European project that we ran together with 5 European countries. And I will speak to you about it a bit later. As you can see, the topic of my presentation is about bullying in school, in primary school and preschool. Preschool in particular is a particular topic, is a particular environment where also literature is not consistent in defining or not defining bullying as a typical or specific kind of form of aggression between such young children. We have proof in literature, and some from Peter too, who is here, that states that aggressive behavior can be seen early at 12 months, but there is an increase around 3 or 4 years old. But there are also studies that shows that children are quite able at 4 years old also to detect the roles in bullying episodes when they are presented with proper stimulus, proper scenarios. So we started with just reasoning about the need of clear definition of bullying in toddlerhood and childhood, and also we wanted to deepen the thought of children about what bullying was. And I'm still working with some colleague of mine, Barbara Spears in particular, when trying to define or at least to explore children representation of bullying. But this is not what I'm going to talk to you today because the time is very limited. However, there are lots of meta-analyses about showing that it's important to intervene since early ages. There are some forms of bullying which are more resistant to intervention compared to other forms. And in this meta-analysis from 2020, some lower effects of bullying prevention were detected on verbal bullying, which seems to be more resistant to intervention. So what about children, young children? We saw that as well that lots of intervention point out how it's important to work in a preventive way when fostering, for example, socio-emotional competencies. There is lots of literature about this. And especially for young children, we see that intervening very early can prevent a cascading effect that can last also during primary school and even later. So it's particularly important to start the intervention very early and improving in children the capacity, those core skills, socio-emotional skills that deals with self-regulation, with negotiation with others, with the capacity to solve conflict in a positive way, to have empathy and to be assertive towards the others. This is the Kazel model, the one you are familiar with, I guess. So I'm not going to take a lot of time, but however, the importance of this model, in my opinion, and also in the opinion of teachers we are working with since many years, is that we stress together the role of emotional regulation together with the social side of emotional regulation and the capacity to interact positively with other people. So we started from the CEL framework, and we examined also school-based prevention in primary school, but unfortunately we find very limited studies on effective intervention on preschool. Among preschoolers. There are a few in literature. Mine won't be one of the good ones. I will show you in a while. But there are lots of problems also in validating intervention in preschool. However, I will talk about this later. However, this is the project I was leading as a PI, at least for Italy. And we involved different NGOs and some university. This project was, I like the name, and now it's become one of my preferred motto, turning obstacles into opportunities. Because really we try to start from exploring the ideas of bullying between adults, teachers, and parents, as well as kids. And we developed together with them a kind of intervention that teachers could implement by themselves in the classroom. So it was a kind of a participatory approach. So this also partially explains why the results are not so clear and very well defined. However, the aims of the project were to, as I said, to involve teachers and parents in a bullying prevention program based on the promotion of social competence, socio-emotional competence in the class group, fostering cooperation, empathy, and pro-social behaviors. Easy. And this should have been done by teachers. So as I said, we took a part of the study just to develop together, to get ideas also from the teachers, from the literature. Then we designed an intervention model, and we tested the efficacy pre and post. And however, this project became an opportunity for adults, especially teachers and parents, to work together. We organized local intervention groups. They were called in this funny way, but there were periodical meetings between teachers and parents and researchers with some stimulus that allowed people just to talk together and to find a common way to solve problems in the classroom. Let's say, how do we manage the birthday policy in our classroom? Birthday policy is something very easy, something very concrete, the parents can understand and teachers can understand. So we spoke and we reasoned together just to get an idea of how the two educational contexts can work together in order to promote socio-emotional competence among kids. So our aim was to let them understand the relational dynamic of the class and also to nurture an inclusive educational environment. We have qualitative data on these meetings, but I am not going to present them today. So more in details of the study today, here I will present some results dealing with the nature and extent of bullying behaviors among preschool and primary school pupils, which is a contribution to literature. And the second aim was to evaluate the efficacy of the socio-emotional training implemented by preschool and primary school teachers in reducing bullying behaviors. Although as I said before, it was not a program for reducing bullying. So we just had the hope, at least, that something could change in the group dynamics. Something, maybe. And but however, the program was a wider program on socio-emotional competences at group level. So it was not an individual program. It was not a social skills program. It was a group level based. It was based on cooperative learning. I show you later a little of the details of the program. But this is the, is the schedule of the research project. So as you see, here we invited the schools in Emilia-Romagna to take part into the project. We manualized after the first period some intervention that was reviewed many times. We submitted the project to the local ethical committee, and we presented the project to the teachers and to the parents. The teachers after the ones who we involved in the beginning. So there was a wider group of teachers in the school. Then we collected the data for the pre-intervention measurement. We did a specific teacher training after we developed our, already? Wow. 5 minutes. We did a teacher's training when we manualized our handbook. And teachers had to implement the SEED. It's called SEED, is an acronym that changed in different languages of the program. And then we measured the post-intervention. What came out? The method. As you can see here, we had 355 children. some preschool and some other primary school school pupils. And unfortunately, we had only a convenience sample because when you work with schools, I don't know if it's in your experience, but it's very difficult to find very cleaned randomized control trial. It's a wishful thinking to find a randomized control trial, at least in Italy. So it's a convenience sample, and the data collection was done pre and post the intervention, which took about 8 weeks to be implemented. And we gained information from kids, from peers, self-nomination also from teachers and from parents. I don't put here. About the children measures, here we had the peer nomination with the vignettes, which is a suitable method to explore the capacity of very young children to detect through the episodes direct bullying, direct physical aggression, indirect relational aggression, and direct verbal aggression. So they were asked, we followed the methodology developed by Claire Monks and Peter Smith and other colleagues. And for what concerns teachers' measures, we had a lot of them, but here I just selected a few ones. We adapted some item of the STRS, Student-Teacher Relationship Scale, and we measured here perceived trust, relational adjustment, and belonging. So these are the core features of the intervention: metacognitive training, socio-emotional learning, gamification, which are the core features of the intervention we develop. And these are the specificity of the seed that we develop and we put into a kind of manual that the teacher could refer to every day. So it was easy. These were cartoons that each class had. They were just A4 as a size. Each group could work with the cartoon, which was a stimulus for the kids to reflect. And the teacher had a list of the questions that he or she could ask the children just working. So there was a story, a scenario, and guided questions. And each group had to work together and to solve the problem, socio-emotional problem, depicted in each episode. We tested this kind of through 5 units and 10 activities. We revised and there was a sort of circular methodology, and the contents were very close to children's daily life, my first day at school and so on. These are some of the posters that has been produced by kids in primary school. However, why did I say, well, I'm not so happy about the validation of the intervention? I skipped the descriptive analysis, but there are some interesting results, and some other results has to do with regression for understanding what's going on, what's changing before and after the intervention in the whole sample. So what about bullying forms? Kids are, even at young age, are able to detect the more visible forms of bullying, while, as literature says, are not able to, compared to the primary school children, to detect indirect form of bullying. Indirect relational bullying is a specialty of grown-up children, and this is in line with literature. The same is for victimization, where the overt forms of bullying are less reported. I will got only 1 minute. And what changed according to the roles? Not so much. The intervention was quite effective only in reducing bullying, active bullying, because for victimization, as you can see here, we had a very sharp increase from before to post-intervention. The usual paradoxical effect, I should say. When you speak about bullying, then percentages increase. These are the results of bullying perpetration with the regression analysis, and you can see here, again, with the total number of nominations received, you can see a decrease, not a decrease, but an increase in bullying perpetration in the control group, let's say, with brackets, into brackets, and also indirect relational bullying, although it was rising up also in the experimental group. So there is a group dynamic that goes on. Probably our intervention may be effective in reducing to some extent, the expected increasing of indirect relational bullying. We don't know exactly because there are many variables connected and embedded. The same is for victimization, as I said. Here again, the experimental group go much worse than the control group. We have an increase in the number of total nominations the kids share, probably because children are more aware of the phenomenon. However, concerning the teachers' rating, teachers show perceived trust, relational adjustment, and belonging to increase only among preschoolers. Well, this was the relation the teacher perceived with the child. So it's how the teacher reflects upon the relationship he has with the child, with each specific child. Discussion, we jump because I already told you about. But the nice result is that we got a further confirmation that children at preschool were consistent in identifying bullying behaviors. And what should we take home as a message? That we could also explore the potential of intervention aimed at improving teachers' efficacy in fostering socio-emotional competencies among children, and at the same time improving teachers' awareness of the quality of their own relationship with children. I think we did also this kind of intervention when we worked together with parents and teachers, so there was a kind of side intervention for teachers, and we believe that such a twofold intervention could positively impact on the whole relational context of the class, improving inclusion and belonging, and thus contributing to prevent bullying from early ages. Thank you.